Welcome. I'm Kimberly Williams, the CEO for Absorb Software. Absorb offers its learning management system globally, and many companies leverage our system to advance their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. To help support their efforts and our own, we partner with other companies to offer the Ally Chat series to coincide with global DEI events. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate World Interfaith Harmony Week. The United Nations established this event to promote harmony between all people, regardless of their faith. As companies become more global and more diverse, the need is increased to create a workplace where people of all faiths feel welcome and can be true to their beliefs. Today's panelists have risen to the highest levels in business and represent many faiths: Hinduism, Muslim, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism. Today, we will hear their stories about obstacles they may have overcome, how they leverage their faith to be better leaders, and hear advice on how each of us can be an even more effective ally to our coworkers. So before our moderator kicks us off, panelists, can you each do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure, I'll get started. My name is Obaidir Rashid. I go by Obi. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Absorb.
Good morning. My name is Mavia Easter, and I'm the Vice President of Technology at U.S. Radiology Specialist.
Good morning and good evening, everybody. My name is Nandini Srinivasan, and I'm the Vice President of Quality Assurance at Motive.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Lickman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Consumer Safety Technology.
Morning, I'm Mindy Mullis. I work for U.S. Radiology Specialist. I'm the Vice President of Physician Operations for both Charlotte Radiology and Upstate Carolina Radiology.
Hi, good morning. This is Subhi Sethi. I'm the Chief Client Officer for Clearwater Analytics.
Karina, do you want to go ahead and get us started? Sound good? So Karina Rudnitsky, she is our VP of Legal here at Absorb Software. Karina?
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. We're going to start off our panel with a speed round. So the way that the speed round goes, it's one question goes to all of our panelists, and they have a couple moments to respond. So OB, I'm going to kick off the series to you. The question is, what is a key tenet of your faith that may be different from other faiths?
Thank you, Karina. The key tenet that I wanted to highlight about Islam is the word jihad. It's probably the most misunderstood and misinterpreted concept in Islam. It really means to struggle, and it is an attempt to be a better version of yourself, whether it's personal, professional, financial, or health, it doesn't matter. Islam tries to promote this constant struggle to improve yourself.
Mavia?
I am a non-denominational Christian. The foundation, which means we don't associated with a traditional sector or formal religion, Methodist, Baptist, what have you. The foundation of our services and our faith is solely based on the Bible, and we take those teachings and apply them, make them applicable to our day-to-day life.
Nandini?
Hi, I'm a practicing Hindu, and I think the key differentiating tenet for me is our Hinduism is based out of something called Vasudeva Kutumbakam. This is a Sanskrit phrase. It means the whole world is one family. So Hinduism promotes constant active discussions, and I think it's all absorbing, all adaptive, and that's what has kept me going for the longest time with Hinduism.
Jeff?
Yes, I'm Jewish, and I think the key tenet that I would focus on is that in Judaism, it really focuses on our current life versus the concept of an afterlife. So there's not really much of a discussion about afterlife and rewards or punishments associated with that, but rather really a focus on the here and now, which often for us translates into a focus on helping those in need here on this earth, and knowing that we want to focus on the ability to give back where we are today.
Mindy?
I'm a Christian, and the basic tenet of the Christian faith is that Jesus Christ is the only way to have an eternal relationship with God the Father. So through that sacrificial death on the cross. That's what Christians believe is the way to have that relationship.
And Subi.
Born and brought up as Hindu, claim myself to be a global citizen, but the key tenet which I firmly believe is in the concept of cause and effect, largely driven through Buddhism. It's the effect we see are due to the causes we make, and I guess many faiths and philosophy mentions that, and that inspires me, and that makes me go every day in whatever I do. Well, it's very empowering because if I want to change the effect, all I need to do is change my causes. So as simple as that.
Well, thank you, panelists. That is the end of our first speed round, and we'll get into the first round of panel questions. The first question goes to Jeff. Jeff, how influential were your parents in the faith you hold today?
Yeah, I mean, I think not surprising, they were very influential. I grew up conservative in the terms of Judaism. So I was put in after school Hebrew school from when I was 6, and I went up through till I was a junior in high school. So I was engaged in my community, which impacted me across the board. I spent a summer in Israel when I was in high school, immersing myself in that culture. So they really instilled in me an importance of being connected to your faith. And that has helped, continue throughout my life. I feel like it was a factor in me marrying someone Jewish who shared a similar connection to Judaism as I did, a similar approach to the role we wanted religion to play in our lives, the lives of our children. And so while they were influential, I'd say I'm less religious than my parents are, or how I was raised, but that faith really still does provide critical guardrails for me in how I interact with people at work, friends, and my community.
Now, you mentioned you were raised conservative. Do you want to just quickly explain what the difference there is between other denominations? I guess.
Sure. There's depending on where you are, there's 3 to 4 sort of different ways. I don't want to say levels because I don't want to assign something like that to different levels, but there to different ways to approach a religion. But there's Orthodox, which is much more strict, and there's lots of sects within Orthodoxy. Then there's conservative, and then there's Reform, and it's really more of how maybe on a day-to-day basis you are engaged with the religion. And I was sort of right in the middle. I was sort of in the middle.
In the middle. Okay. And now you're closer to Reform? I know you said you're not as.
Yeah, I would say, interestingly enough, tied to sort of the comment about how influential my parents were, being conservative was very important to them. And so I can't get myself to probably utter the words that I'm a Reformed Jew now,
Okay.
but I'm less of a practicing conservative Jew. Yes.
Understood. We won't tell anyone.
That's okay. Yes.
Okay. The next
You'll
question.
hear them in the back of my head. So.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jeff. The next question goes to Nandini. How do we all help raise or mentor children to be comfortable in and proud of their faith?
Thank you. So I personally believe that the end goal of all religions is to prevail happiness, peace, and joy. So don't make religion a taboo subject at home. Just the paths taken are different, so have open conversations. In my household, and I'm a mother of 2 boys, in my household, although we are Hindus, we do have a Christmas tree that goes up around Christmas. We love eating sweets during Eid because that's how I grew up. And I know where to go and find them also. And as a family, we go to the Gurudwara on Sunday evenings. And my son attends Valley Christian High School, which is a Christian high school. And I am using that opportunity to read up on New Testament because I'm seeing so many fables being very similar to what Hinduism has, right? Because the primary goal is do good, be good, and that is the driving force. So have that conversation and not make it a taboo subject. I think that totally helps. And I would say exposure to multicultural festivals. And like I said, I'm a mother of 2 boys, so everything in my house is centered around food. So even if it is like, getting them, is there a Greek festival going on, or a, whatever is a communal festival going on, go there, may food be the intensive, but let the children be exposed to the different cultures that they see around them.
Do you find that by opening them up to other faiths and other cultures has brought them closer to Hinduism at home, that they value the faith and the practices that you share at home?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's the other way around. I think because my son has grown out around me, at a household, so my in-laws live with me, so he's seen grandparents being spiritual, parents being spiritual. So the fact that he's reading Bible studies as a subject, a graded subject, isn't very hard for him because he's seen these spiritual conversations happen at home. So it makes him more secure. And we have these open conversations about afterlife, or, that, hey, that how does it work, or scientifically, does it go against the concepts? And, we have a very open discussion. So it definitely helps.
Wonderful. Thank you. Obi, third question is coming to you. What are 1 or 2 formative experiences or lessons from outside your career? It could be school, church, or other activities, volunteer work, whatever it may be, that help to shape your approach to work and your coworkers?
Yeah, I can think of a few, but I'll focus probably on one pretty early in my life. Just to give you a little bit of a background, I grew up in a middle-class conservative family in Bangladesh. My father was a bureaucrat in the Bangladesh government, and in 1988, he was asked to go to the Bangladesh embassy in Pakistan. So as a family, we moved to the capital of Pakistan, which is Islamabad, and I joined this new fancy private school. It was expensive. The only way we could afford it was that Bangladesh government was paying for it. But I did not go to an English medium school before, so my English was very, very poor. I felt like a fish out of water. I felt inadequate, unsure, insecure all the time. The good news was that vast majority of the people in school, like the teachers, staff, the students, were very nice, welcoming, and accommodating. But one person saw me as different, as an outsider, from a faith perspective, which is weird because we actually share the same faith. Bangladesh and Pakistan are, majority Muslim countries. But for that one person, somehow I wasn't Muslim enough, or broadly speaking, the Bangladeshis were not good Muslims. And he would point to the fact that we elected our first female prime minister as the reason why we're not good Muslims, which was very silly. And then he found more ammunition down the road when we experienced a severe flood in Bangladesh, and he would come to me saying, "See, I told you, God is not happy with you," and which is kind of silly. And I was too young, too dumbfounded by that accusation. And I had language barriers to really respond to that person. But it was a silly argument because Bangladesh is located in a geography that it is bound to happen. And it was happening before, before the first lady prime minister also. But what really taught me was that it just takes taught me 2 lessons. One, it just takes one person to make you feel defensive, miserable, and to create this toxic culture. And it also taught me a lesson to never be the one that sees the world as us versus them. In both ways. I don't want to be the person who feels superior to others. And I also don't want to be the person that sees myself as a victim and not assume positive intent in others. I think it's very easy to divide. I want to be the one that unites. And that's the principle that I bring back to my professional life, where I see all of my colleagues belonging to one team, one side, and part of one family. And just to finish off with the twist in the story, a year later, the Pakistani people removed the military dictatorship, went to a democracy, and they elected their first female prime minister. So I had the last laugh.
That was going to be my follow-up question. That's a great story. You took my follow-up question. I was going to say,
That's
was there, what happened with the kid? Did you have other encounters with him? But I think the lessons learned are definitely impactful for sure. Mendy, this one goes to you. How has your belief system influenced your leadership style?
I was excited to get this question, and it's a lot of fun for me to just describe how my faith kind of interacts and how I try to make that a part of who I am on a day-to-day basis. But I think from a Christian perspective, we believe, that there is a God who's creator, sovereign, and a savior, and he exists. So those basic elements of my faith really drive how I interact with others and how I want to engage with people, not only on my team, but my colleagues. That being said, I feel like every person is loved, they have value, and they're created uniquely for a purpose. As a leader, I enjoy learning about each team member or colleague, which is so diverse, and I love learning about what motivates people. It includes learning about professional goals and personal goals, just creating an environment that people feel like they can really express their individual strengths and helping leverage those talents to get the results that we want. Being transparent, we're all works in progress. And because of my faith, I see myself in light of a holy God. So I'm not perfect. I'm striving to be perfect. And because I often misstep, I try to assume positive intent in the action of others and be quick to forgive. So I know I'm first in line that needs that. So I try to extend it as much as possible. And really try to be transparent and authentic. My faith holds me accountable for how I treat others. And really at the end of every day, did I make a difference? Was I true to myself? Was I true to who people were created to be? And creating that opportunity for them to do so and setting that example, it always kind of keeps me in check. It's a really strong gut check at the end of the day. Did I do that? Did I serve others well? But really it's about people and how am I creating that value in them, and then creating value for the organization by allowing others to connect to their purpose. What were they designed to do? And I think once we do that, we all can be very, very efficient and effective working together as a team, respecting all those differences.
That's interesting, because if you take that and you go to those workshops that talk about leadership and building, a lot of it just talks about find strengths and promote people and this and that. But the underlying focus could be something that you just spoke about, finding the strength from your, based on the impact that you have from your faith, and then finding that within people and giving them the chance to build that up. Since we do have everyone on here is a leader, does anyone else want to join in and talk about how their belief system has influenced their leadership style?
I can jump in. I think I'm a very people-oriented person, and I really like talking to people, always being around them. So I actually feel that growing up, just seeing people come together has been a big part, and having those conversations. And even if it is like going into the direction where you're having positive outcome debates. So I think that's really encouraging. That has been a big part of my leadership style.
Wonderful. Anyone else? If not, we're going on to our second speed round. All righty. Same concept as before, a couple of minutes to answer the question. The second question is, what are some of your cherished traditions or memories that are tied to your faith? OB, you're kicking this one off as well.
Sure. So as Muslims, we celebrate two Eids. So think of Christmas twice in the year. And the key thing there is that as Muslims, we have to kind of earn those celebrations, in the sense that the first Eid happens after a month of fasting from sunrise to sunset. So you kind of work hard the month and then you get your reward in the form of Eid. And the second Eid happens after some Muslims will go for pilgrimage in the year. And when they're done with that hard work of pilgrimage, that's when we celebrate the second Eid. And why I cherish those memories is, as a person that grew up in a middle-class family, this is when you get your new clothes for the year. And this is when your elders will give you little money, as it's called ED. And for a child, this is the only time you get some money in your hands to spend for yourself and stuff like that. So I do remember this to be, really, really fun times as a child.
All right, thank you. Mavia, you're next.
So I am currently, like I said, a non-denominational Christian. But my family, my grandmother, Southern Baptist, my mother, Jehovah's Witness, my father, Church of Christ. But for me, regardless of the name, the tradition that I hold close to is being of service, taking care of those in need. And I had an aunt here, I'm in Dallas, Texas, and every Thanksgiving, before anyone in the family could eat, what I cherished the most is we had this huge, she was a manager of an apartment complex, and we would set up all these tables of food, and it took us weeks to collect, gather, have donations, and we would just serve the community. And just how rewarding and refreshing and really a good demonstration of taking care of those in need. And she's no longer with us. I miss that tradition, but that is one that I will always cherish.
Lovely. Nandina, you're next.
I think the traditions that I cherish is, like I mentioned before, so we have multiple festivals with Hinduism, right? And with every festival was like family, friends, everybody coming together, right? So to me, just I grew up with 4 siblings, then the house filling up with cousins, then with family, and then with neighbors, with friends. Doesn't matter whether they are Hindus or not, we would all celebrate everything together. So that was just is the most cherished tradition. And even today, it doesn't matter whether, I mean, I'm lucky to be in California where there are a lot of folks from different countries, but we block off our street and we celebrate Holi by going out there, and everyone comes together and we play Holi. We explain to them what it is, a festival of colors, and how it is going to be. And we do clean up our street afterwards because we make quite a mess. But that happiness at that moment of everybody coming together is something that I cherish, and I want to pass it on to my children too.
Wonderful. Jeff?
Yes, I'll go quickly as well. So in Judaism, 13-year-olds have what's called either bar or bat mitzvah, which is really signaling your introduction to the community as a Jewish adult. This was something my parents did. Actually, my mom didn't have one when she was a child, but had one later in life as an adult. She grew up Orthodox, and girls were not allowed to have bar mitzvahs or bat mitzvahs at that point. But anyway, my parents had them. I did. My children did. And just really quickly, a little story. When I was 13, it was still during the Soviet Union, and Jewish people actually in the Soviet Union at the time were not allowed to freely practice their religion. And so what I did was something called a twinning, where I was matched with a 13-year-old Soviet boy who was not able to have his bar mitzvah, and I had his bar mitzvah. I had his bar mitzvah on his behalf, and incorporated him in my ceremony and talked about him. And amazingly enough, several years later, my family took a trip to the Soviet Union to meet with and bring support to Jews that were still there and not able to practice freely. And I got a chance to meet my twin, which was in his family, which was really cool. And so my kids wanted to do something similar when it came to their bar mitzvahs, but Jews are now able to practice freely in Russia. So instead of that, what they did is they twinned with Jewish kids who died in the Holocaust and who were never able to have their own bar mitzvahs. And so we found kids from towns in near relatives who, my relatives who came from Eastern Europe, and identified a few kids there. And my kids, again, similarly, had their bar mitzvahs on behalf of these children as well. And really, I think the connection there between what I did as a child and what they did as children made it more meaningful. And this idea of creating a more inclusive world that really is core to the faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mindy?
I'm just gonna say I love that. I mean, all these stories. That was fun. Not quite a fast answer, but I think it was very appropriate.
Yes. Sorry.
No, I loved it. It was great to hear it. I'm glad you shared all that background. For Christians on Easter, we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ and kind of the new life that brings. So the timing of the holiday usually aligns with like early spring, and new flowers are beginning to bloom. Trees are starting to turn green. And similar to OB, we typically get new clothes. at that time of year to wear to our Easter service, and that Sunday service is usually early in the morning. We have to get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock. We're trying to be up at the breaking of a new day. And so those are childhood memories. Some are a little sleepy-eyed as I remember them, but we had a great way.
Subi?
Wow, this is quite educational, and fun. I think we should do this quite often. If nothing, we will learn something about it and everything, kind of stuff. I made extensive notes. I'm going to start celebrating 10 more festivals, kind of stuff. But from a background perspective, as my parents were born and brought up on the other side of India, which is now Pakistan, and during the partition, they came in here. When they came in here, they had their own identity crisis, right? Did they belong there? They're Hindus by religion or by the way they were born, But having said that, I remember my dad telling me, we are Indian. Who are we? We are Indian, kind of stuff. So we had the luxury of celebrating almost every festival because the only common thread which tied all of us was good food, good clothes, new clothes, a lot of pumping show and money, as Ob, said that. Having said that, one of my favorite memories is we in India we celebrate this festival for woman god, goddess, twice in the called Navratras. It's celebrated very differently for northern side and the eastern side and the western sides. It lasts for 9 days and largely praying the goddess, and there are different forms of woman goddess, right? Some who's angry, some who gives you strength, some you education, some who gives you, and there are 9 goddesses on that, Clearly, the mandate was 9 different set of new clothes and 9 set of different new kinds of food. Of course, you fast, like but probably the only time we don't eat meat and we don't drink, during that time. But and it ends on the 9th day by going and giving food to at least 9 not so well off young girls, So the tradition is you end the day with, on the 9th day, you get 9 girls at your home who are young, and you feed them and you give them something as a token of appreciation. I think it's emotional. I think it's celebrating woman children, girl child, giving them education. I remember very fondly my mother giving, rather than clothes, she used to give pencils and stationery and, erasers so that they can continue with their education. And that's the tradition which is in our house. And we continue that very, 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 very fondly, goes with our themes. Yeah.
Thank you, Subi. So that concludes our second speed round. We're going to get into our second round of panel questions. And I'm going to send this one back over to you, Subi. So you're not quite done. What advice would you give someone who is working closely with someone else who's not accepting of their personal beliefs or values, or someone whose beliefs are contrary to their own?
This is not an easy one, and that's something the world struggles with today, in my view. But first and foremost, I want each one of us to take a step back and acknowledge that there is a beauty in differences. If all of us look the same, imagine all of us had the same length of hair or color of the hair, or the same height and same stuff, life would become boring. So first and foremost, there has to be an acknowledgement of that. There is beauty in differences, and acceptance of those differences is a big part of building these relationships. Imagine if I have to work with Kimberly and I'll say, okay, you do change these things in yourself and then I'll work with you. What's the point, right? She gives me strength in the way she is, right? The second question we all have to ask ourselves, and I often ask myself, is have I accepted their belief and values? Because I won't be able to differences if I haven't accepted their beliefs and values. And if I haven't, it will very, very much show. It shows in the way I converse with them. It shows in the way I show up to work. It shows in the way I probably offer them coffee and tea. It's very evident. And vibes travel. I'm a big believer of that. Third, which I have very, very recently learned and more so imbibed, very consciously in the way I come across is try and play the game from the other side. Try and play the game from the other side. So you've played your game and you try and play it from the other side. While it's easier said than done in this self-righteous world,
Yes.
but make an effort and, make a consistent, conscious effort. If we do all these three things, it helps bring in positivity and harmony and appreciation of the point of view of others. And I think that's an advice, I will give to each one of us. If we all have to do a takeaway of one word from this panel, I would say acceptance. And acceptance is once you've done that, I think the road ahead is beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if someone else is not accepting, if we're accepting of them, it'll keep our aura positive, and hopefully that positivity will influence them going forward. Kind of what Obi did with his previous classmate,
Yeah.
there was some language barrier, but some of it, Obi stayed positive and the world showed its own.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have to make a consistent, conscious effort in our own world, in our own organizations, in our own little personal lives. We are very accepting of our parents. We are very accepting of our children. We are very accepting of spouses. So quote unquote, kind of stuff. But I think once we start accepting each other, I think life is beautiful then.
If I can add one point there, Karina,
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
once you understand that most faiths have more in common than not, it gets easier to accept others, right? And some of the biggest religions in the world have the common lineage. I mean, with Judaism, Christianity, and Muslims, like in Islam, for example, many of the revered figures in Christianity and Judaism is our prophet. So we actually, revere them the same way. So once you understand there is more in common, it's far easier to kind of accept each other the way they are.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Obi. Absolutely. Jeff, I'm going to go with you.
Before we go to Jeff, we had a question that comes through, and I think just to build on this topic a little bit.
Sure.
So I think from both the perspective of somebody who might have a traditional belief or somebody who maybe has a belief or a lifestyle that disagrees with a more traditional belief. So let's say that you're gay, or let's say that you've committed adultery, or you've had a child out of wedlock, or a variety. You're living with somebody without being married. There's a number of ways that people live a life that may not be in agreement with a traditional or conservative religious belief. For the panel, what advice do you have on both sides of the equation? So if you're working with somebody that is against your lifestyle, or their faith doesn't support that lifestyle, what advice would you have for that relationship? And then the other way around, your faith maybe doesn't agree with that. How do you come to work every day when you've got so many people that live a lifestyle that's different, and how are you productive in that environment? So it's kind of like a twofold question if anybody wants to try to take it.
I'll take one part. Going back to what Subi said, first and foremost, I believe all interactions are intentional. I believe that they're divinely created for whatever reason. But again, looking at that person's situation without judgment, without fault, for whatever reason you're connected. That person may have something to teach you to strengthen your faith, or as a test to help refine your faith, so that that you're not being judgmental. And you never know. There's a story. Everybody has a story, but first and foremost, I go with trust and without judgment. And hopefully people watching that interaction, knowing the differences in our lifestyles, will realize that we're not here to judge. That's real, and I believe that we're not here to judge. It's not our place to do that, but to be of service to our brothers and our sisters.
I would like to add in, like, just like how Subi said, and also it, just like how someone else is different, you're different to them, right? And that's important to know. And you're at a workplace, they could be different, but as long as you guys are working together, right? Doing your tasks, you're getting your goals, you're achieving them. How does it matter? It doesn't really matter, right? So there are differences, and I'm Subi, I'm really going to in love with your line. There are differences, there's beauty in it, and
Yeah.
just learn to accept that and look at it.
I think it's an interesting question in the sense that you can really go two different directions. You can say, that part of our lives we need to separate from work, and it's our job to be respectful for one another in a work setting, and it's our job to collectively work together to help what we're trying to accomplish, and almost put that aside. Or you can say, let's try to tackle this head on and address the uncomfortableness of that conversation. And I don't think there's a right answer. I think that, it's about building relationships in the most effective way you think you can. And that might be one way for interacting with one person. It might be different with another person. I think it's about, it's almost situational to me in a way, but needing overall collectively to have a level of respect to say, this is a conversation we either can have together and build upon it, or it's a relationship that's probably best left aside, and let's find other ways to be effective with one another.
And
Yeah,
sorry, you want to go ahead? I'll be quick. And just to follow up on what Jeff said, I firmly believe trying to really, as a leader, create an opportunity and create an environment that allows somebody to bring their whole self to work, and creating a safe space for them where they feel like they can engage in that conversation if they want to. I mean, and I recognize some people choose not to have conversations about that at work, and that's fine, and making that okay. But also the person who wants to engage in a conversation or be curious, creating an environment that allows them to do that, where they feel like they can bring some of that diversity into your environment, and just allowing them, because sometimes that helps them to be more efficient, more effective, and a better part of your team, and they're engaged. So I think from a leader perspective, it's really, it gets back to relationships, knowing your people, and really trying to create that environment and cultivating the trust there.
Kind of relates to another question that we're getting, and implying, I think, in this question is just that that's sort of taboo to come out as somebody who has a strong faith at work, that somehow it's become less acceptable. For some people, they feel like it's less acceptable to bring that full self to work and to talk about their spirituality and how important it is to them. It's really interesting. Like, my team has a lot of different religions on it, so we actually talk quite a bit about faith when it's just us. And as Obi or I can't remember, Jeff, the amount of similarities is quite interesting. The things that overlap, but how do and maybe it's different in different companies or different environments. And I'm just curious, somebody who feels like they, are there guardrails you'd give them about how to talk about faith, how to bring it into the workplace? It's obviously a big part of who they are. So I'm just, curious if you guys have any advice for that.
I'm not going to talk about, I mean, I'm coming from more of an angle of on a receiver side. I think one of the principles that have really guided me is the fact that there's a quote that I read somewhere that really stuck with me, which is, do not judge until you understand what's going on. And once you understand, there's nothing to judge. That is it's a driving principle in my life, because I think nobody's a villain in their story. Everybody has a reason to do what they're doing. once you understand that, it's become so much easier to accept the person as they are. So it's not necessarily coming from from the angle of a person that's trying to get accepted, but I'm saying from the angle of when you see somebody different, that is a driving principle that I apply to myself.
I think if I can add, maybe a line, Kimberly, I think just let them be, you know. If they want to talk about it, great. If they don't want to talk about it, respectful, right? There are people who share their spiritual belief and religious belief, often can end up, either ways. There could be people who are pro or not pro on it. People nowadays are guarded in how, they come across and all of that stuff. But I think just as an organization, as an enterprise, if we provide a platform to freely express and give them a safe space, right? That it's okay. If somebody's, practicing Hinduism versus somebody's practicing Judaism versus somebody's practicing Buddhism, all of them have their own reasons. All of them have been born and brought up. And if they want to share it, if we provide them with just a clean space and a safe space, I think we as enterprises have done a job well, right? Now, of course, there'll be organic, there'll be judgments, there'll be respect, there'll be, debate, again, as far as you encourage that as well in a constructive fashion, I think it gives people a sense of belongingness, and I think that's something which we need to create as a sense of belongingness.
Yeah.
If
I have another question. This is directed specifically at Mavia. So, and I think I know the answer, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. So it's somebody who served a mission with the Church of Latter-day Saints. And in the process of that mission work, the 2 years, went to a lot of different Christian churches, found some of the practices to be similar, some more enjoyable and fulfilling than others. But anyway, he's curious if you, being a non-denominational Christian, do you attend different churches? And if you do, how do you, what is your experience with that and sharing your belief with others?
So similar to I have attended a lot of churches, and I'm not limited to services I attend. I have a very diverse friend group, and you have to be, again, of service and being a servant, be open to supporting your friends and family. So through marriages, through births, or just in general messaging, I'm always open to learn. I mean, I've learned just in here listening to the different perspectives. I've learned some things about Judaism that I didn't even think about before in the lifetime. So I have gone and attended different services. I read different faith books. And I believe just by removing the labels and the walls associated with the titles and the differences of the different religions, when I was growing up, non-denominational wasn't a word. You were either Baptist or you were Jehovah's Witness or you were whatever in your circle. So I was really excited when the church as a larger organization had this space for people who didn't want to affiliate with one thing but the Word of God. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. We talked earlier about parents and having a big influence, or families, on your faith and your religious beliefs. There was a question, obviously, Mavia, you just referred to it, about how you've continued to evolve and discover your religion sort of independent of that upbringing by exploration. I think, Subi, the question is did any of you else, do that? And I think, Subi, you might have done that yourself, where you got to explore Buddhism as more of an adult. I'm just curious to talk a little bit about what that was like, to kind of go out and learn a new faith or a new set of beliefs.
Honestly, it was very difficult. The country I belong to, has 28 states and I think 2,800 different religions and different forms and formats of it, and belonging to a middle class family, things like these of following a religion and faith wasn't like one of those priority items. We were all God fearing and all of that kind of stuff. As I grew up and I started my professional career, right, I started to, those formative years were, had a cast on me, right? I had, I had anger, I had, I had resentment, I had, let's say I had issues, having said that, and I was looking, sometimes when you're seeking, you find, right? And maybe I was seeking for something more, than a management philosophy or anything, a guidepost maybe, And I stumbled across Buddhist philosophy. Again, it's influenced very much by Hinduism, as Nandini articulated, right? It started from east of our country, but then a lot of China and Japan and Korea took on, and all of that stuff. There are various forms of Buddhism and all of that stuff, right? And I, I started reading about it. It's not a philosophy that you pray to an idol or, you do anything, or you chant or, there are chants in Japanese Buddhism, and there are different chants in Chinese Buddhism and all of that stuff. So about 15 years back, I stumbled upon this philosophy and I started to, read a lot about it, the various forms of it. And I think the crux of the thing is what I articulated in my beginning. It's largely called Lotus Sutra. The reason why it's called Lotus Sutra is lotus as a flower, right? Reproduces and produces at the same time and dies at the same time. And that's where it derives the cause and effect principle, saying, okay, if you're seeing a particular effect, just go back and peel the onion on the causes. If you're angry today, just go back and look at the causes you made, right? And you will find the answer. And I found that very empowering. When I went home and I said, okay, I'm going to follow a Buddhist philosophy, and my parents were like, are you out of your mind? Where did you stumble this all upon? But I graduated, I made an effort, and, I read a lot, I met I'm also a detailed person, so I went and met a few monks, kind of stuff. I stayed in some of those places, so it inspired me, and then various concepts, started emerging, and it started intriguing me. It's also action oriented, so it teaches you, okay, so now you want to change the anger portion. These are the 9 steps to it, right? So it also not only tells you what to do, it also tells you how to do, right? And thereby, I started getting deep into it, and it became a way of life. It's not that I'm sitting and chanting, and it's not I'm praying to an idol, but I've, back of my mind, it influences, the rightfulness of it. And I feel good about myself today, 15 years from now, a year back from now, as in I think my anger issues are sorted out, or at least in control or in check, kind of stuff. 9 out of 10 times, maybe, I'm putting guardrails around it. But I think that's, where I, started to do that. Then I saw the connection with the Bible, and then saw the connection with the Jews philosophy. Then I saw the connection with Islam, and I think most of them, are largely aligned to the same principles. Sorry, I didn't mean to kind of hog this up, but I just, I just wanted to make sure that I journey, because if you take anything on the adult, or more formative years, more so as a spiritual philosophy and a religion, I think it changes you, it shapes you very differently.
Yeah. There's another question. Where would somebody who doesn't associate with any major religion fall on this panel? And I probably could take that one, and maybe I could persuade somebody else to do it as well. But I'd say my mother had not a good experience with the Catholic Church where she was raised, and so she was pretty adamant about keeping us out of the environment that caused her harm as a child. And so I was pretty much raised without an organized faith of any kind. And I think probably how that impacted me was a little bit maybe what Subi was talking about, or potentially OB, but I was a little bit of a white piece of paper where I felt like I could look at the different elements within different religions and adopt those as kind of my spiritual foundation. I think people who know me would say I have an extremely strong value set. And, you know, it's things when I think about, you know, love thy neighbor. Well, you also have, you know, in the Islamic faith, you know, love for your brother like you would love yourself type of a thing. And I'm a big believer of that from a, you know, how to treat each other, and sort of what Jeff talked about. You need to make a difference during the life you're here, and a positive difference. And I really believe in that. And Jeff taught me when we worked together about atonement in the Catholic Church. Atonement is a very private matter between you and God, or you and the priest. And there's a forgiveness that the priest can give you by, you know, having you, you know, say certain prayers, and then you're forgiven for the things that you've done. But in the Jewish faith, you do that atonement face to face, or directly with the person. And so what I found with Jeff when he first started doing it with me before Rosh Hashanah was he would basically, you know, we would talk about, you know, things that we might have done to each other that we didn't intend to be harmful to each other, or apologies. It's just like a great method for open communication. So I guess, I don't know if that answers the question, but that would be one that I'd say. I guess I don't really particularly fall into any one of these religions. And so I've just sort of adopted what I think are great practices for many of them. So,
If
all
I
right, one
can
more
add
question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Kimberly, if I
Opie.
can add to that, you know, as I said, I grew up as a devout Muslim. You know, I did the whole 9 yards and went to pilgrimage to Mecca and everything. But eventually, I did evolve out of religion to an extent, to a large extent, basically. And I see religion more as, if I can compare to traditional schooling and homeschooling, religion gives you a framework, a heuristics, if you don't want to kind of do the hard work yourself. But then when you become a little bit more secular, you can kind of do some homeschooling, and like Kimberly said, it's a white paper. I found that to be very liberating, to be able to, you know, go back to the values that I know are good values. And basically, I don't want anything to divide. I want everything to unite. So if a faith is not really catering to uniting, then I would rather go to the path where it you know, unites, basically.
All right, one more question here from the group to answer. How do the panelists see the point of spiritualism, like collective consciousness or oneness, without attaching ourselves to a particular organized religion? So sort of related probably to the question we just had, but do you guys think about that in how you lead, and how you bring values to your organization and so forth?
I think spiritualism there's a fine line between spiritualism and being religious, right? But spiritualism is where you actually try to take that guiding light and try to find the peace or the calm in the storm. And I think all of us in our daily workday lives see quite a bit of stress that you want to take that moment, take a Zen moment, take a you know, how they say, just take it a mindful thinking moment and just step away from all of the chaos that's happening around you, and then just take a deep breath. That could also be being spiritual. It's as simple as that, right? Finding that peace with your own oneself. You don't have to attach that to a religious practice, but being religious ushers in that inbuilt spirituality. Right. So they're two different things, and you don't have to intertwine them. You could be not like how Mavia was saying, you can be like not conforming to any one particular religion, but at the same time, be spiritual and find that calm, find that one moment for yourself.
I totally agree. And to me, as being spiritual, man, just acknowledging that there are higher sources And you may think, and in some moments of my life, that higher source is, I need to talk to God. I need to feel his presence. But there are moments where I might, need to just be near his creation. I've gone out and just, in my bare feet or hug a tree or it's just, in my opinion, not associated formally to how I worship. It's the guiding force that there's acknowledgement of something bigger, that at this moment I need to look beyond myself to make it through or to feel, to rebalance or what have you.
So we probably have time for maybe one or two more questions. Jeff, you're next on the list. So I'm going to go to you and I'm going to combine two of your remaining questions because they're similar and one of them we kind of talked about. So okay. I think we've already kind of talked about, if you ever faced or how you would respond to a situation professionally, if your values conflicted with somebody else and how you would handle that, but also tying in the concept of, recent external factors like political climate or social media. How has that impacted your comfort level at work?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little about it earlier, but I think that it's sort of this increased sensitivity to diversity and to our differences is clear, and one that isn't going to go away and shouldn't go away. It's one that we should lean into. I feel like I go out of my way to try to make people feel comfortable and be seen for who they are. Given, I think we all probably feel like to some extent there's been prejudices against us in some part of who we are. And so certainly the sense of anti-Semitism or prejudice against Jews that they faced in the past and still today, I think it's important for me to not allow that for me to not be part of the problem. And so really going out of my way to make people feel really comfortable for who they are, and being willing to share that in whatever capacity they feel like they're willing to share it in. It's not something that should be forced. I loved when someone who worked for me who just would feel very comfortable talking about what made her different, and I appreciated that and made sure to give her the space to do that. And if someone didn't want to articulate it that way, then that was also fine. I think from my perspective as someone who's Jewish, since we do see an increase in anti-Semitism politically and social media these days, I was worried that it might impact my comfort at work. But I will say that my organization's leadership, past and present, really has done a great job of setting the tone of inclusion, of zero tolerance for crossing the line in any way, whether it's directed towards my faith or anyone else's faith or anyone else's differences. I can think of multiple situations where there's been a challenge that's happened and someone who's crossed the line. And I'm proud to say that I'm part of organizations that have zero tolerance for that and have taken the steps necessary to not just remove that issue, but then acknowledge the issue and acknowledge what happened, acknowledge how that is not how we as an organization should treat one another, and then use that as a learning experience to move on.
Absolutely. Well, Kimberly, I see
Yeah.
we're coming up on the hour. I'm gonna give the podium back over to you. Panelists, thank you so much. This has been a lovely conversation. I wish we had more time. We have a lot of great questions on here, but unfortunately we do not, Kimberly.
Yeah, yes, we do. Well, thank everyone for attending. Somebody had a question in here about why do we hold these events? And I think really what it comes down to is, I think like anybody who's on this call, in some way or another, they felt like there've been something that's been held against them. So for me, it was being a woman, that there were obstacles I needed to overcome, but everybody has something unique and different about themselves that somehow they feel like they don't fit in. And so as I've, gotten more senior in my job, I felt like I had a nice platform to be able to help bring these conversations to light. And so when I came to Absorb, partnering with Welsh Carson, who is the private equity firm that sponsors us, we decided to host these events. So that was why the history of it. And that brings us to our next one is going to be on March 8th, and where we will be celebrating International Women's Day. We're going to have a focus on STEM. So we'll have leaders who come from a background in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So until next time, remember, each of us can be an ally, and each of us have an opportunity to make our companies better and a more inclusive workplace. So see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.